Today I decided to make my first video. The fast is already going for 3 days and I lost about 6 pounds since I started it. But it wasn't a pure fast until now because I drank water with lemon juice, which helped calm my stomach and reduce those bouts of nausea, which I have when I'm not fasting too. And I think it also helped remove some toxins. My health condition creates a necessity for me to fast from time to time. I like fasting because it cleans out toxins that accumulate from my regular existence. And I'm also doing this fast because I want to bring attention to how we speak as a society to the unemployed, underemployed, or about underemployment and unemployment. And I came up over several months of hard work. One of the things that I produced was like this talking points, which I'm going to include the link for in the description. And they consist of 3 categories. My talking points about unemployment. I found no better way to speak about the problem than by sharing my talking points, because who's going to read my essays? By the way, my essays are in the description for this. They will be in the description for this video. So first category is representation, second is political economy, and the third one is culture and stigma. And the first category is political representation for people experiencing unemployment and economic insecurity, because they are rarely treated as people having very similar problem and circumstances, and they are treated as clients but never as constituency, as a category of people that can vote collectively for their interests. And we see a lot of services for the disadvantaged, but we never see, like, certainly people who run them are usually upper middle class from a narrow band of ethnicities, which does not include Slavs usually. And they are certainly speaking for the clients, but they never let clients speak for themselves purely. So we also have peer-run versus professional-run organizations. Unfortunately, there are many peer organizations nowadays that claim to be peer-run, yet at a certain level, peers are silenced and substituted for the voice of, again, this upper middle class, narrow set of ethnic origins person who speaks for them all. And this is not solidarity, and this is how people are successfully strained on their tiers of socioeconomic ladder, while we pretend that we have democracy and everyone is a peer. But some peers are more equal than others. I've seen that. I worked for an organization like this, so I have intimate experience with how it works, and the mechanisms for silencing people with lived experience beyond a certain level of power are also there. And I had the chance to witness them firsthand. So speaking for versus organizing with. Unfortunately, I also see this in the left. They have their certain representation of their minorities. They speak for themselves and those groups, but they're not organizing with the unemployed, underemployed people who are struggling to afford a livelihood. In many cases, this is not a criteria for them. So I should say that, in my opinion, many leftists are not they're very anti-Marxist. I'm not a pure Marxist, but I have respect for him as a scholar. My social theory goes beyond Marx. So political economy. The unemployed are the reserve army of labor, according to the writing of Karl Marx. Reduce the bargaining power of workers. Disciplined labor are required for the function of capitalism. Well, of course, and what I wrote here in my talking points is something sugar-coated, which I would say in a more informal conversation with a friend who sincerely cares for my life and situation, is that who is also a scholar of Marxism. I'm not a great scholar of Marxism. I read only some of his work. But the idea is simple. The unemployed are used to blackmail employed, so they can't essentially leverage or blackmail their boss that they will leave and no one will work. So there's always a replacement ready for the existing workers, which makes existing workers more disposable. So clearly, Marxism is not in denial of supply and demand. Unfortunately, I believe that unfortunately I noticed that a lot of our leftist socialists, especially young ones, that believe that everyone can be given everything for free without increasing or redistributing means of production. They don't understand this. So even a healthy economy is often expected to have some unemployment. Well, there are some economic theories that come probably, again, I'm not very good at genealogy of economic theories, and I believe that I need to study this more when I finish with, well, continental philosophy, reading continental philosophy. But there's a genealogy, and I would say they probably come from like this, maybe like Chicago School of Economics, maybe that stem from, all that stems from Austrian School, Frankfurt. I'm not sure who came up with this, but there are a number of economic theories, and I can do a deeper rabbit hole dive on this, that say that there needs to be a healthy amount of unemployment for capitalist mixed market economy that we live in to function. So clearly, you have an equation, a parametric equation, and you can play with many variables to change its outcome, but one of the variables is employment. So if we want to retain capitalism, we need to intimidate workers into working on inferior conditions that grind their health away and consume them more by having this body of people that would be desperate for work and can immediately replace those who are too unhappy with the current working conditions. So the official employment rate does not count everyone who wants work. Neither, it's not on my list, but I should add it. Neither does it count people like the U1 to U6 statistics. We usually get U3, the official unemployment statistic. They're not they're not categorized based on willingness to work or ability to work. So they are absurd, and I would say their logic is nonlinear, probably, so to get people lost deliberately. Even a healthy economy needs unemployment. The labor force participation rate has fallen by 4 percentage points in Maryland since 2008. And 2008, it's 67.5, 68%, and 2026, it's 63.9. So it's very interesting thing how we count unemployment, because they're obviously elderly, they're obviously people too young, there are people who are disabled, but then there are categories like forever students and people who can't fit into the job market because let's say you have someone from an ethnicity that's very removed from those who make decisions on our country, and they would need to cling to their own ethnicity to find work in some way that is somewhat related to my situation, which I'm not going to elaborate on in this video. But also people work under the table. There's so many situations, and those categories are there to conveniently present to the populace that everything is all right and that they're not in the sacrificial number of 5% that are unemployed, so they can be happy and also probably boost their morale by humiliating some of the unemployed and telling them to get a job, losers, and all that. So labor force participation rate provides another way to look at labor market health. Yes, so when you look up unemployment, well, I did a very thorough ChatGPT search on the subject. You get different categories of unemployment from U1 to U3, where U1 is I already forgot them. I'm not going to talk about them, but they are not arranged, as I already said, in accordance to willingness or ability to work. And there's also the labor force participation rate, which is not counted in those unemployment categories. So they form a very interesting relationship, and I recommend that you research all of this yourself, because I can probably generate graphics and stuff that stick them in this video, but maybe someone can generate even better graphics, like a graph representing all those numbers and the percentages. For Maryland, I like, for example, to compare Maryland to a small town in Pennsylvania that relies on oil and gas for its income, and compare this new statistics. Compare it how it looks like there versus here, because it's two very different societies, even though they're both in America. So, general strike. Many of my fellow leftist friends dream about this one day we're going to have a general strike. Yet I have doubts about this because people are afraid to lose livelihood, and I feel that a general strike for some whom the propaganda to do a general strike reached would leave the workforce or strike if that ever happens, and would immediately be replaced by those whom the propaganda, in this sense I mean propaganda in the positive sense, did not reach. So they would be eliminated. Yeah, strike breakers are already built into the system, and this is why the dreams of general strike, in my humble opinion, are a little obsolete. So I do believe that left needs to focus on unemployment if it really wants that general strike. Now, my big question is, why do labor movements organize workers but rarely the unemployed? I'm not unemployed. I'm marginally employed, but I'm struggling with livelihood. Why more privileged workers, like government workers or postal workers, they do all those union things, and I used to support them, but I don't see them supporting me back. Does that mean that their livelihood is more important than my livelihood? Are we building some kind of a caste system? I don't understand this. So clearly there's no uniform working class solidarity, and for this reason, there's probably also not going to be a general strike. Culture and stigma, my favorite one. So, Protestant Work Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism is a book by Max Weber. I recommend to listen to it as an audiobook if you like listening to audiobooks, because reading it is a little bit boring. He repeats different thoughts and writings and some numbers related to different Protestant congregations in Europe in his time. And he lived, when did he live? I think slightly later than Karl Marx, so late 19th century, beginning of 20th. I believe his work is mostly likely late 19th, but I would need to verify this. So Protestant Work Ethic is a good book, and there's certainly this idea that prosperity beams from the sky onto people that work hard, and all those who are poor are less human and are in worse relationship with God, has certainly originated from Protestant Europe and has been served as a good lubricant for exploitation. Not that we can't say that someone like people in Ottoman Empire or in like Roman Catholic world didn't have exploitation, but certainly this narrative helped justify it, because even our current president in some way is tied to prosperity theology. There's a certain pastor that he refers to or used to refer to that is known to preach it. So employment as a moral worth, it also ties to this. So if you can't get a job, you're probably morally unworthy. I don't want you in my neighborhood. You're too unworthy. You're going to drive down the real estate values. So as much as I want to help you as a person, I see you as an economic threat. I also see that, I also see this behavior of many people who claim to be all about equity, inclusion, and all the other liberal values, unfortunately. Maybe even less with conservatives, because conservatives make draconian laws so they themselves can be kind. I heard this quote from a conservative source. Yet liberals make kind laws so they themselves can be cruel. There's an opinion like that too, and I think it has value. Maybe it came from someone like Herbert Spencer, because it sounds a lot like him, but I don't think this quote directly came from him. Maybe it was inspired by him. Isolation, shame, and visibility. So certainly our society implies that to be social you have to be a consumer, and that you need to burn money in restaurants and other venues, and very few events are free, and they're usually not places to make connections. Sometimes it's difficult to judge that, but certainly isolation, shame, and invisibility results from unemployment, which results the unemployed person to be even less able to find jobs through connecting with people rather than by filling applications, something that never worked out for me. And this alienates them more. Deserving versus undeserving poor is a very interesting topic that may also deserve another video for it. And I don't want to make this one too long, so you can probably think about this yourselves. And go-to services reflex defense is very common. I would ask someone who has power and money, if they can help me improve my situation. And I had this experience for many, I would say, more than a decade of me asking. And they would say things like, hey, you know what, go to Google or like search the internet. And this is such an insult to someone who meets barriers in society, uh, often for very similar people, from someone very similar to the people I asked. Honestly, that's also something to consider. That it is a deterrent, and it seems to be coming from the need to defend one's position in society rather than care about liberal values. And as I said, in my experience of interacting with conservatives, including rural conservatives, they may actually need less of that deterrence because they preach equity. They don't preach equity and inclusion from the beginning. Uh, and then, of course, last but not least, why is unemployment treated as an individual problem while many other social problems are treated as collective ones? Like we have AAs for people who do drugs and alcohol. We have different groups that organize around a specific trait, but the most basic thing that may unite people is their inability to provide for themselves seems to be largely ignored and not supported as a single cause. And I think there's food for thought there too. So thank you for listening to the end of this long video in which I explained how my fasting connects with the question of unemployment talking points, which I wrote not so long ago and which I am trying to make more popular. I also wrote some lengthier essays if you're interested. Please like and subscribe and comment if you reached this point in the video. Thank you and have a good day.